Okay, let's dive right into this. So, if you're sitting there right now, totally convinced that you are a perfectly rational decision maker, someone who carefully weighs the pros and cons of absolutely every choice you make, well, I've got some pretty surprising news for you. Welcome to this explainer, where we are going to completely shatter that illusion. Today, we're popping the hood to look at the hidden, everyday machinery of your own brain. We're exploring the phenomenal insights from Daniel Kahneman's groundbreaking work on how we think. We're going to decode the invisible mechanics that dictate how you judge, how you decide, and honestly, why you predictably make the exact same mistakes over and over again. Think of this explainer as a literal user manual for the human mind. Here's our roadmap for getting your cognitive software sorted out. First, we'll meet your operators. Second, we'll look at glitches in the system. Third, we'll examine the overconfidence trap. Fourth, we'll uncover the happiness glitch. And finally, we'll wrap up with upgrading your decision-making. All right, let's jump to our first section, meet your operators, or the architecture of thought. So you've essentially got two radically different characters sharing the apartments of your brain, and together they dictate absolutely every choice you make. On one side, we have System 1. This is your mental autopilot. It operates automatically and incredibly fast, with little or no effort at all. System 1 is the voice that instantly yells out the answer to 2 plus 2. It handles perception, pattern recognition, like instantly reading emotional cues on someone's face, and it just loves giving you intuitive answers. It craves cognitive ease. In fact, things like familiarity, repetition, or even just reading a clear, bold font increase your cognitive fluency, which literally makes System 1 feel like a claim is simply truer. It's incredibly energy efficient and obviously completely essential for you to function every single day. But then we have System 2. This is your logical supervisor. It's slow, it's deliberate, and it takes real effort to use. System 2 is the part of you that actually has to wake up to calculate, say, 17 times 24. It's responsible for complex calculations, deep reasoning, and your self-control. You see, System 1 really struggles with complex logic and statistics, which is exactly where System 2 is supposed to step in. But here is the absolute kicker. Because System 2 requires immense effort, you naturally try to conserve it. System 2 is a profoundly lazy controller. So, when System 1 feeds it an intuitive, easy answer, System 2 often just blindly endorses it without ever bothering to check the math. Moving on to Section 2, glitches in the system. Basically, what happens when that lazy supervisor completely drops the ball. Because System 2 is so eager to just nod along with System 1's suggestions to save a little energy, we don't just make random mistakes. We make highly predictable, systematic errors that completely deviate from rational logic. The first major glitch here is anchoring. This happens when your numeric estimates get massively influenced by a totally arbitrary starting value. Even if you explicitly know the starting number is completely irrelevant to the question at hand, it still secretly hijacks your estimate. This is exactly why a ridiculously high initial price tag on a car makes the slightly lower, but honestly still super expensive, sale price feel like a massive bargain. Your brain got anchored to that first huge number, and your lazy System 2 just failed to adjust it far enough away to reach the actual rational value. Next up, we have the availability heuristic. Our mental machinery has this massive tendency to judge the frequency or probability of an event based entirely on how easily examples pop into our heads. Vivid or recent events are just way overweighted in our minds. It's why people get completely terrified of shark attacks or plane crashes after reading one crazy news headline, completely ignoring the fact that they are statistically far more likely to get hurt just driving their car to the beach. If a memory is vivid, System 1 assumes the event must be highly probable. It creates a completely distorted funhouse mirror view of reality. Then there's representativeness. When you're making probability judgments, your brain massively prefers an easy stereotype over complex statistical information. Instead of looking at the actual base rates, the statistical realities of a situation, System 1 simply looks at how similar a situation is to a stereotype it already holds in its filing cabinet. For example, if you hear about someone who is really shy and loves organizing books, System 1 instantly jumps to, oh, they must be a librarian, rather than a farmer. It completely neglects the statistical reality that there are vastly more farmers in the world than librarians. It just ignores the hard math entirely. Okay, now I want to try a quick experiment with you. I want you to ask yourself a very complex question. How happy am I with my life right now? Really think about it for just a second. Notice what just happened? This brilliantly illustrates our next glitch, substitution. You see, the question, how happy am I with my life right now, is actually incredibly difficult to answer accurately. It requires a lot of processing power. So what did your brain just do? Without you even noticing, System 1 swapped out that super hard question for a much, much easier one. How easy is it to recall good events recently? Your brain substituted the complex, overarching evaluation of your entire existence for a super quick scan of recent, accessible memories. It's a brilliant, yet deeply flawed cognitive magic trick. Which brings us to Section 3, the overconfidence trap, forecasting and risk. So what exactly happens when our flawed cognitive machinery gets tasked with predicting the future? Well, it results in what Kahneman calls the planning fallacy. Experts and everyday folks alike heavily overestimate the reliability of their judgments, especially when they have a really compelling narrative in their heads. Just look at how teams forecast project timelines. Usually, they take what's called the inside view. They imagine their specific plan. Maybe it's a home renovation or a massive presentation at work, and they put on these rose-colored glasses, envisioning all the best-case scenarios of it going perfectly smoothly with zero delays or traffic. And this systematically causes them to massively underestimate the time, the cost, and the risks. What they should be doing is taking the outside view. This means completely stepping outside of the specific project and actually consulting the historical completion times and outcomes for similar past projects. Using this outside view typically produces far more accurate forecasts, but you guessed it, it actually requires waking up System 2. And this brings us to a concept that fundamentally breaks standard rational economic theory: prospect theory and loss aversion. As humans, we are dramatically more sensitive to losses than we are to equivalent gains. Just look at the math of human behavior. The psychological pain of losing $100 is roughly twice as intense as the joy of finding $100. Because losses loom so much larger than gains in our minds, we will do incredibly risky, almost irrational things just to avoid a loss. We aren't rationally calculating expected utility. We just desperately want to avoid the agonizing pain of losing. All right, Section 4, the happiness glitch, the two selves. Here, we're going to introduce a pretty surprising internal conflict regarding your own well-being. Because it turns out, we don't even properly understand our own happiness. Kahneman distinguishes between two entirely different versions of you. First, we have the experiencing self. This is the version of you that actually lives through moments, evaluating events as they happen second by second. But then we have the remembering self. This self is the scorekeeper. It remembers, it tells the story of your life, and most importantly, it dictates your future decisions. The problem is, these two selves have entirely different ideas of what makes a good experience. The remembering self often makes choices that completely contradict the total amount of happiness actually felt by the experiencing self. And why does this happen? Well, it's all because of a glitch called duration neglect. When your remembering self looks back at an event, it almost completely ignores the actual duration of the experience. Instead, it focuses heavily on the peaks, the most intense moments, and the endings. It's exactly why a spectacular 2-week vacation can be entirely ruined in your memory just because you lost your wallet on the taxi ride to the airport on the final day. That short but intensely frustrating ending literally overwrites a long, wonderful experience in your memories. Your remembering self will actively choose to repeat an experience with a better ending, even if your experiencing self suffered vastly more total pain along the way. It profoundly distorts our choices about our own future experiences, and believe it or not, even how we evaluate public policy. Finally, Section 5, upgrading your decision-making, or how we actually patch the software. So how do we fix all this? We need to patch the software based on everything we've just learned. Now, Kahneman is pretty cautious about simple, overnight fixes, noting that many of these biases persist even when you're totally aware of them. But we can implement explicit procedures to at least reduce the influence of these intuitive mistakes. Step 1. When the stakes are high, you absolutely must intentionally hit pause and force your lazy System 2 to engage. Ask for alternative hypotheses and actively seek out disconfirming evidence. Step 2. Beware your own intuitive answers. Test your gut feelings against simple statistical checks or by imagining comparable cases, rather than just relying on vivid memories or easy stereotypes. Step 3. If you're in business or investing, use structured forecasting. Utilize reference class forecasting, rely on that outside view of past data, and run pre-mortems. A pre-mortem is where you imagine the project has already completely failed and you work backward to figure out why. This significantly reduces overconfidence. In Step 4, on a broader level, we have to design better choice architectures. Knowing these biases helps us craft nudges, like changing default options, simplifying choices, and presenting data as frequencies rather than percentages, to improve genuine human understanding. We've officially pulled back the curtain on the dual systems that run your mind. You now know about the cognitive ease that fools you, the anchoring that tricks your estimates, the overconfidence that ruins your forecasts, and the bizarre conflict between your experiencing and remembering selves. So I'm going to leave you with this. Knowing the highly predictable glitches of your own mental machinery, will you just let your lazy System 2 blindly endorse your very next big choice, or will you force it to wake up?